Matt Kazee is with us. Matt came on air with us, about 2 years ago now, I guess, and helped break down the VTech shootings. He was very close to the facility, went on location, did a lot of filming, got really inside that whole event, which, of course, later related into massive anti-gun legislation, just as we, I guess, predicted it would. Matt has been an on-air commentator and a news truth reporter for quite some time. His website, 33rd Parallel News, and truthmovement.com, and he's with revereradio.net, among others. Matt, great to have you on the show finally. I really wanted to have you come on and kind of break this down for us, especially where we're looking at some of these cross-connections with VTech. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Jack. It's always good to be on the show. I will say this. I wanted to, at least for all the people who listen at Virginia Tech, I should go ahead and point out, everybody else tends to call it VTech, but there's another school that is VTech, so it's something that I should probably at least point out. It's just VT, if you're going to call it like that.
VT,
but,
okay.
Yeah, tech people get upset about little things like that. But, Jack, I'm glad to be on the show, man. I love your show. I've always really looked up to what you do and how you analyze things, and so it's just good to be back on here. I wish I could say it was on different circumstances. That seems like we're talking about mass shootings in this country way too much. First off, Jack, I mean, what is your take on this whole connection to the Virginia Tech?
Well, I don't really have a take, to be honest with you. I know that there are a lot of questions not being answered. I know that the entire news media dropped whatever initial reports, an eyewitness report said, and moved to an evolving script. And I know that they're going to take advantage of this in multiple ways, and it's all very convenient. So I wish I could tell you I had a take on this. If I was going to guess, I would say Hassan was a patsy, because it's just all too convenient. You've got a Palestinian, Palestinian-born, though he is an American. His parents were Palestinian, right in the middle of a land grab and really just genocidal warfare by Israel onto Palestine. So here's the perfect patsy. They had just taken out a clause, at least according to all the information we have, in the Patriot Act, which led to lone wolves. In other words, if you're suspected of being a lone wolf, they can come after you. Instead, they're focusing more on cells. And then literally 2 weeks later, you've got an alleged lone wolf that does this shooting at a military installation, which is sure to tug at the heartstrings, as it should maybe, to all Americans. So it's all very convenient in my mind.
I agree, definitely. And this is all on the heels of really setting the table for the right-wing extremist groups with the MIAC reports and other documents that have come out leading up to the transfer of power. So, I think it was definitely something that's going – I know it's already being used to try and fuel the war and give some kind of excuse to justify why we're over there. I will say this about Virginia Tech. There's a lot of people now who are actually, deeply concerned what is going on with the recent past there at Virginia Tech, and some of the papers have picked up on it. Of course, some of the national papers, like the San Jose Independent Examiner, was saying stuff like, does Virginia Tech breed mass murderers?
Yeah. And this guy, a member, allegedly, of the ROTC, much like Mr. Cho was before those shootings. And we had the same – this all looks like it came from the same playbook. And that's what disturbs me, Matt Kazee, is that, here we had a guy that in Cho that it's very difficult to understand how he was able to do all the things he was able to do without the police coming in, with no one doing anything about it, from chaining the lock over here, from going over here and running across the hall and just shooting all these people and reloading with nothing happening. It's even harder to understand how something like this can happen by a lone shooter shooting off well over 100 rounds, as it's said now, at a military installation.
Yeah, that is true. I want to at least correct you. One thing that I have found out for certain is he was not a member of the ROTC. Now, it's very interesting, Jack, because there's been a lot of misinformation that has made it to the major media, CBS, ABC, quoting misinformation right at the get-go, which also kind of makes me wonder about what the motives are behind this whole thing. But he definitely was not a member of the ROTC. I've checked with people who are trying to figure out which teachers that he had. A lot of personnel changes since 95. He arrived in 92. But, hopefully we'll be able to talk. I'll be able to talk to one of the teachers who had him. I did get a report from a friend somebody who knew him from his days in the Roanoke, Vinton area, who said that he was a quiet, happy, pretty much innocent civilian at the time that he knew him, didn't even know about his military history or that he was going into the military or anything, just happened to know him from the area. And that seems to be one of the things that people are saying about the guy, is that he was somebody that wasn't really on the outside, somebody that is depressed or showing warning signs. Now, I did want to mention one thing about Virginia Tech and Cho. The lead up to that whole event with having the SWAT facility pretty much clear buildings for 3 days before the shooting because of these bomb threats. That Saturday before the shooting, Cho supposedly went down and did a test run, and somebody saw a kid in a hoodie chaining the doors shut on the outside to Norris 2 days before the shooting. Now, with that much police presence that had already been there, that should have been the number one lead right there, because that's exactly what they were looking for, bomb threats at these various buildings.
Right.
And here's a report of a kid actually chaining a door at one of the buildings that's on the list. So, that's bizarre. The other thing, Jack, is 146 rounds in 9 minutes with 60% accuracy.
In the case of the VTech massacre.
Yes, this is Virginia Tech massacre. This is much higher rate and more ammunition in such a short period of time than somebody who is classically trained as a soldier. So I was surprised to hear the media questioning how could he shoot so many people in such a short period of time when they did not question that at all about some kid at Virginia Tech.
Right. Keeping in mind, this guy is a psychiatrist. According to his family members, he didn't even like going to the shooting range. There was at least some, maybe that's misinformation coming out, that he was a sharpshooter. I mean, they almost made him sound. In fact, in many ways, he fits almost the identical profile of, say, Lee Harvey Oswald, at least the varnished reports that finally came out about him, not the truth that he was running around with a lot of different people in New Orleans and even here in Texas. But then we get these two totally different composites of the shooter, one that the mainstream media seems to run with and one that seems to go a little closer to the facts. And in this case, this particular alleged shooter, Major Hassan, not much of a shooter, not much for violence. And this is, of course, probably why he's a psychiatrist. In fact, here he is at the 7-Eleven going in for his daily breakfast of 7-Eleven hash browns. I mean, that could rot anyone's brain, by the way. But he's in there and he's smiling, and he has no signs of stress, according to the people. Yet we're to believe that literally an hour or two later, he goes marching into the most guarded, heavily manned military base in the world, walks in with 2 handguns, even though he's allegedly under suspicion of terrorist activities, gets off all these rounds. The second and third shooters, which are initially detailed in the reports, just evaporate and disappear, much like in the case of, if I can do some comparative analysis, Matt, Oklahoma City, where there were multiple bombers, John Doe's number 2s, all of this initially reported and then later changed for the benefit of history.
That it seems to be a common thread with these mass shootings, and I mean, it could maybe be explained as just confusion in the earlier reports, but the thing that gets me about this one, Jack, is they go ahead and have a press conference and say the shooter is dead, and they were able to keep this story up for 2 hours, almost 3 hours before they had another press conference and admitted, well, no, he's alive, we've got him in custody. So that was a little concerning, to say the least, too. I'm not really sure if those earlier reports were just confusion, but, the eyewitnesses that have come out and have been videoed so far have not said anything about secondary shooters, and they did say that Hassan was in the building for quite some time before he pulled out his weapons and stood up on the desk.
But what about this? And we reported this last week with you, Matt, with our listeners. CNN had reported a senior officer playing golf near Fort Hood witnessed the arrest of one of the 2 surviving suspects. He had been told by MPs he clears the area. They come in with about 30 or 40 cars carrying more MPs. He said an MP told him that authorities considered the man to be a suspect in the shooting after overhearing the man that he was with the shooter. Then the man surrounded for 25 or 30 minutes. There's some phone calls made, and a convoy of vehicles arrives led by this Crown Victoria carrying men in suits, and the guy's taken away. I mean, that is an eyewitness report.